Okay then, thanks for tuning in for another plugs video on Wayne's Electrical. And in today's vid then, what we're going to be looking at is variants of British Standard 546 and British Standard 1363. I might also be introducing in this video on this channel, if I haven't discussed it already of course, is another plug-in standard which is slightly more industrial. You wouldn't use it around the house, but it's in reference to, you know, arduous conditions and things like that. Okay, so there's a bit of a clue as to what's going to be going on in this video when I say variants of the previous two standards. Now those two plugs you can see there up in front of the camera, wrong way, they are what, you know, would be generally used in domestic situations. Okay, the one over to the right is the British Standard 546. That's a 15 amp as well. And this one here is British Standard 1363. Can still use that today, but then having said that, you can still use this today, but not many people in the UK use this plugging standard anymore. You can do, as long as the socket has got shutters in it. Okay, you can use this in a specialist application, but general everyday use, the old British Standard 546 isn't used anymore because these replaced it on the basis that these plugs have got fuses in. Okay, you can't buy these plugs anymore because they've since been replaced by something like this, and you've got sleeving on the plug pins now. Okay, so there we go. But even with the replacement plug, with these, if you knock and bump them about a bit, they will break. Okay, and when I said earlier on variants of these, what I'm talking about is like arduous condition plugs and rubberized plugs and all that lot, and that is what we're going to be going into in this video. Okay, so first off then, we're going to be discussing British Standard 1363, and you can see it there up in front of the camera. Okay, it's got rectangular pins on it. This one's slightly longer and slightly wider than the bottom two. Okay, and there we go. That is of course an MK plug. This is the older style because of the logo on it. The more recent one, you've got just M and a K, which doesn't go to the circle, and there's a square around the logo, but we won't be going into that. I think actually I've got the modern day logo on the Tough plug, which is about to come up. So this then, yeah, you can use that in domestic situations, but there may be certain situations where this wouldn't be applicable because it may take a bit of a knock and a bump and could risk being broken. So what we got then in replacement to that, if I'll just get it, is this. Now this plug is wired, so it is on the length of flex, so I'm just going to unravel the flex, and it looks a bit like this then. There you go. Now this has got the modern bang up to date MK logo on it. You can see what I mean. The M and the K doesn't go to the circle, it's just like that, and then you've got a square around that. Okay, quite why they updated it like that I don't know, because I do actually prefer that one. But that aside, we're now looking at a Tough plug, and this one, it can take knocks and bumps because it's been specifically designed for that. Okay, and there it is. But there is another version of the Tough plug, more well known, and yes, even when someone is selling one of these plugs and it isn't that brand, they still refer to that brand name. Okay, it's a bit like saying Hoover for vacuum cleaner. Okay, it doesn't matter what brand your vacuum cleaner is, most people refer to it as a Hoover. Okay, and what I'm talking about is a brand of plug known as a Dura plug. Okay, so let's get this in front of the camera then. Again, it's wired, so there's going to be a flex coming out of the bottom of it. There we go. As you can see, it says Dura plug on it. Just like the Tough plug, it is British Standard 1363 with sleeved pins on it. I don't really think it's a requirement to have the sleeving colour coded, but on this one they have anyway. Okay, and the thing is with this, you might think that dual plugs are completely different and separate name from MK. Well, here's the thing. Dual plug and MK and a few other brand names, they're all sort of rolled together under one, like a group of companies sort of thing. And there we are. And yes, you can actually find dual plug products in the MK catalogue. So there we go. And like I say, that is the the tough, arduous condition equivalent plug of this one. Okay, you might put this on your kettle, but this kind of thing, you wouldn't put that on like garden appliances or whatnot, or an angle grinder in a workshop. Okay. But then having said that, the old drawer plug, if you've got, say, an appliance, you use it in domestic situations where this wouldn't look too desirable. The one that fills the gap is obviously the tough plug. If I can get that again. Okay, so the tough plug would sort of go in the middle of that, like that, you see. And then, so we got the three types of plug that you can use for the same old sockets. So over to the right then, we've got typical domestic. Okay. Something which you can use in domestic situations. It's nice and white like that. It's nice and round. Not too bad to look at, but it can take knocks and bumps. And then you got the old drawer plug, which you might put on your lawnmower or an angle grinder in a mechanic's workshop sort of thing. And such like that kind of thing. Okay, this is rubberized and this is just like toughened plastic. Okay, both of these will take knocks and bumps quite well. But when it comes to making tough plugs, the drawer plug type of plug and brand is more well known. Okay. And yes, the old drawer plug logo has been around for quite some time. If you don't believe me, take a look at this. Again, it's on a wire, so you're just going to have to bear with me. There we go. Now, the one to the left then is not like the older style version of this. Yes, there was another version of this around before this styling, and it was sort of that shape. Okay, but I'm talking plugging standards now. This one, obviously, we've already looked at it, British Standard 1363, but just to prove that dual plug has been around for quite some time, you got British Standard 546 there. Okay, both drawer plugs, and I'll get a zoom on that for you. There you go, you can see that on there. It definitely says drawer plug on it, as does the other one. So, like I say, the drawer plug name has been around for quite some time. And just to prove that, there's British Standard 1363 and British Standard 546. Now, that's all fine and dandy saying that, but what about something just as suitable to connect those into, which wouldn't look out of place in an arduous condition environment? Have I got such a thing? You know I have, because this is Wayne's Electrical, and we document electrical bits and pieces from the usual to the more bizarre. So then, have I got the dual plug equivalent of this, trading socket equivalent of this plug? Yes, I have. There it is. Okay. So I've got the dual plug equivalents. And there we go. And obviously speaking, they will connect together. Like that. There we are. So that's what that looks like then. So nice and well suited for taking knocks and bumps out in the garden or in an engineer's workshop. Okay. That's what it was designed for. So take knocks and bumps and all of that lot. So there we go. Nice and wonderful, that. So we've looked at British Standard 1363 then, but what about British Standard 446? Well, again, we've seen the plug. What about a trailing socket for that? Oh, yes. Again, it's on a flex, so you're just going to have to bear with me. There we go. Okay, 15 amps. Okay, so there it is. You can see the dual plug logo on it down the bottom there, and quite obviously speaking, the plug will go into there like that. There we are. Again, can take knocks and bumps and all that sort of lot. So there we go. Again, with this kind of plug-in standard, the 15 amp British Standard 546, this can be used in stage lighting because this plug is unfused. Okay, so if you've got this on a lighting rack, you know, like 15 foot up in the air, you wouldn't want a fuse in there just in case it goes pop, because you'd have to get the ladder out and climb all the way up there just to change epoxy fuse. Okay, they would actually remotely fuse this, and as such, even today, the old British Standard 546, it's still hanging in there. You know, excuse the pun, but it's still hanging in there in theatre and stage lighting sort of thing. And another application for these would be slightly heavier current welders. Okay, the old problem that your typical welder has with the old British Standard 1363 is that the fuse keeps going upon striking the welder up because the inrush. Okay, but with one of these, because you get that extra 2 amps, it can take a bit more grunt. Okay, so nicely suited for your typical domestic welder, but it's slightly, you know, got that bit more kick to it. Shall we say domestic stroke light commercial industrial sort of thing, you know, a single phase welder. This would do it. Okay, because it's got that 2 extra amps of grunt. You can get 3,600 watts out of that, 240 volts. Okay, instead of 3.1 kilowatts, and that'll take it. Okay, so there we go. Now, all that's lovely, fine and fantastic. We've got British Standard 546 suited for arduous conditions. We've got British Standard 1363 suited to arduous conditions. Okay, but both of these have got a bit of an issue when it comes to, shall we say, a small amount of moisture and whatnot. Okay, obviously speaking, between the plug and the socket, you get moisture in there and whatnot. It's going to start causing sparks and pops. And it's the same with British Standard 546. Okay, you get moisture and whatnot in that gap, it's going to start causing sparks and pops. What about then something which, you know, is suited for arduous conditions and has got a certain amount of, shall we say, ingress protection? Well, I've got a set of those, and what we're going to be doing after the break, we're going to be having a look at that, so bear with me and we'll come back very shortly. Okay then, we're back after the break. You can see there an empty teacup up in front of the camera, which basically means that I've just finished having my tea break and it's on with the video. Let's get that out of the way of the camera then. Let's put that over there. Now, in the first section then, I was saying about trailing sockets for use in arduous conditions, and the fact that if you get a bit of moisture in that gap between the plug and the sockets, it's going to start getting sparks and pops and whatnot. That's never a good thing. So we kind of need a different plug-in standard which can offer a degree of ingress protection. Now, don't get me wrong, there were certain manufacturers which they offered a plug to British Standard 1363. It would be completely round, and then around that would be a big circular threaded locking ring, and you would plug that into a proprietary socket and tighten up a big nailed nut, and that would offer like I think IP66 or somewhere around about there. And yes, all of that lot was particularly expensive, and they're still manufacturing them even now. But there is another standard. Again, it's picking up because we've still got that age-old problem where the 13 amp plug can only take 13 amps, which is 3,120 watts at 240 volts, and that would give you 13 amps. And there we go. So yes, once again, even in certain workshops where you've got that welder which, you know, keeps popping the 13 amp fuse every so often, which is a little annoying when you're trying to get something welded up, you need something which can take that bit of extra grunt like the British Standard 546, but at the same time as that, if you've got your welder outside and it's just finished chucking it down with rain, and you're like you're underneath a car doing some welding and whatnot, you're going to be running a trailing socket outside, so you're going to need a certain amount of ingress protection in the plug and all that lot. And so therefore I'm going to be bringing another plug up in front of the camera again now, and once again it's on a flex though, so you're going to have to bear with me. Now this plug-in standard, it was formerly known as British Standard 4343 or IEC 309, and it is now known as BSEN 60309, and there we are. Some people put the -2 at the end, but that's actually a designation within BSEN 60309. Okay, and it's this plug. Whack. There it is then. Okay, now this one is 16 amps, so, you know, this has got one up or British Standard 546, in that, you know, you can actually get even more than 3.6 kilowatts out of it. Not much more, you know, it's, well, 1 amp more, so that would be, I think, 3,840 would that be? So yeah, 3,840 watts then at 240, that would be 16 amps. Now, you probably noticed that there's the pins in there, and it's got this cover over it, or a shroud. Well, that's on there for a very good reason, and that is because this plug offers IP44 protection. Okay, now from where my finger is, right up to the end, that part actually buries itself inside a socket or a coupler, and that is what affords that IP44 protection. There's the coupler then. Okay, as you can see on this, it has a flap cover on it. Okay, no shutters in that. Okay, but the cover kind of provides that for you, and that is why with these sort of sockets, if, especially on the couplers, if that cover has been snapped off, you should not use it, because if that's lying around, like in an engineering workshop or something like that, and like a screwdriver, just, you know, you throw a screwdriver on the floor, it goes skating across the floor, and ends up straight in there. What could happen is, if that's the live connection on there, you've got the shaft of the screwdriver sticking out, that would be live. Okay, and if someone comes hold of it and grabs it to pull it out, they're going to get a blast up their arm. Okay, so really speaking, one of these without a shutter on it, you should not use it. Okay, and as such, if I was ever doing a pack test on an extension lead and I found one of these with the cover missing off of it, or damaged or split on it or whatnot, I would fail it. Okay, because that is supposed to be on there, that is as the manufacturer intended it. Let's get these then connected up, and you can see that from where my finger is up to the end of it, that part buries itself into the coupler. Okay, and it's that which gives the IP44 ingress protection. With these plugs, you can't just stuff them in any old way. There's actually like a little part on there, this little notch. It's called a keyway. There's your pins, and you notice that the big chubby pin in there is next to that keyway. That is what's called earth hour 6. Okay, but when you're working out your earth hours on this plug-in standard, you don't look at the plug, you look at the sockets. Okay, so you've got your earth hole down the bottom, then your earth tube, and you always put the keyway down the bottom, and because the earth lines up with the bottom, that's what's called 6 o'clock earth hour. Okay, if you can imagine getting that lot in there, rotating it around so that the earth pin is over to like the 4 o'clock position, that would actually be suited for 110 volts. Okay, so we won't be going into all that technicalities right about now. You can get these 110 volts, And if this was a 110 volt one, that cover on there would be yellow, and this cord grippy thing on here would also be yellow, and it would be designated for 110 volts, and all of that lot in there would be rotated around so that that earth tube and the other ones respectively would be over at the 4 o'clock position. But because it's down at the 6 o'clock position, that is for the 240 volt designation. Okay, so these plugs can only go in one way round, as it is on British Standard 1363 and British Standard 546. There is a name for that, and it's what's called polarised. So we're going to get those in there. Note how part of the plug buries itself into the coupler, like that. Okay, so we've got them joined up now, like so. And I'm going to let that cover go. You see this notch sticking up on here? Well, this cap engages with that, like so. And what that is for is so that to prevent accidental pulling out of the plug. Now, obviously speaking, this is only like a thin plastic, so it won't actually stop it from being pulled out, but it will help to prevent it from being pulled out. Okay, there's the flex there coming in. I do have a pile of flexes out. I'm trying to keep out of shot of the camera because they're not the video subject. Right. Well, that's actually my knee. Right, so we've got our couple of them. You can tell which way the coupler goes because, obviously speaking, the flap is attached to the coupler, and this part is the plug. Now, if I pull this out, you'll obviously notice that the plug appears to like stretch and get longer. That is because, of course, you got part of the plug buried inside the coupler. The idea being, if a splash of water gets in that gap, it's not going to trickle down to the pins and cause sparks and pops in there. Okay, the whole lot is actually suspended right in the middle. And if water does get in there and trickle in, it's not going to get near any of the electrical pins or tubes in there and cause problems. Okay, so this is called IP44 splash proof. There is an IP67 equivalent of this, and around there would be a large locking ring, and you twizzle the locking ring around. It's sort of like quarter of a turn, and that then forcibly locks the two together. And even if you used to throw a bucket of water over it, it would take it because it's IP67. But with this one, it's only IP44. If I get on that specification, on that label, you can actually see all the details on there. Okay, this coupler is a Ludin Palazzoli. So, as you can see, it's a 16 amp. And then it says that thing that's 6 hour. And that is in reference to where the earth is, in reference to the keyway. And it says 200 to 250 volts. Yeah, 200 then to 250 volts. Two phase and not two phase, 2 pin and earth, or 2 pole and earth. There's your rating there, IP44, and all that mambo jambo down here is just a products code, PM16/2100 FPB. And all of that lot down there, and there's the manufacturer's logo just there. Okay, these actually are made by Ludin Palazzoli. Okay, so there it is. But yes, there's your Ingress protection there, IP44. And like I say, you can get ones with IP67, and that cap on there would have a large locking ring around it. And of course, when you withdraw the plug, if I can get that plug out of there, oh my goodness, if this was an IP67, you'd close that and then turn the locking ring, so that even if this was just sitting around and someone threw a bucket of water over it, you're not going to get water in the electrical parts. Okay, so there we go. But this one, there's only IP44 though. You can have a couple of splashes of water go on it, and it will all be tickety-boo, but nothing like chucking a bucket of water over it, or even chucking it in the bucket of water. Okay, because it would go pop if you'd done that. Now, what I'm going to be looking at now then, now I've got that out of the way, we've now looked at British Standard 1363, British Standard 546, and BSEN 60309. Now, just to finish this up then, I've got another type of plug now. They're getting ever increasingly common, especially in like the domestic sort of setting. And what I'm going to be looking at now then, if you remember this, obviously speaking, this hasn't got a flex on it because you wire it up yourself. And you know where this is going. These are wire it yourself, and I'm now going to be talking about moulded plugs. Look like this. Obviously speaking, there is a flex coming out of this one because you cannot remove it. It's moulded on. See if I can get a bit more outward zoom. Right, there's a moulded plug then. 13 amp, British Standard 1363. This was actually off a washing machine. Okay, if you're wondering what's on the other end of that, it's that trailing socket, the British Standard 546. We won't go into that. So, moulded on plug then. You can't get the flex out of that, you cannot rewire it. It's permanently on there. Sleeved pins. Okay. So, you know, it just goes to show you that this is a recent moulded on plug. When moulded on plugs started being produced, like early 80s, if you can find one, you can actually maybe still find, it'll be on a really old appliance, but you can find a moulded plug that doesn't have sleeved pins. Okay, they are out there, and there we go. So this one then, sleeved pins, moulded on, you can't get the flex out of that. Now with one of these, because obviously speaking British Standard 1363 is fused, if the fuse in there fails, you undo that screw in the middle, the two halves come apart, you can see the join down there, and then you can get in there to change the fuse. Bit of a problem though with a moulded on one. If it's moulded on, you can't, you know, there's no join down there, so it's got to be fused, and it does actually say fused on there. Just there. How to change the fuse in it then if it's moulded on and there hasn't any screws to take it apart? Well, fortunately they've already thought of this. Just in the middle there, this, you pop that out and there's a fuse in there. Okay, you can take the fuse out, put another one in, and then snap that little cover back in and you're good to go. Now just as an end note on this video, while I'm on about moulded on plugs, there are a few coming in from some other far-flung country. And the moulded on plugs, they got that pin configuration, they claim that they're British Standard 1363, but this is where it falls flat. Those plugs, that fuse holder doesn't exist. Okay, and if it's a moulded on plug where you can't unscrew it and take it apart, the problem here being is this cable, it comes straight into there and to all the pins. Okay, now there have even been cases where the earth wire inside the flex isn't actually connected to the earth pin. Okay, it's supposed to be, there's an earth conductor in there, but because of poor production quality control standards, the earth pin isn't actually connected. They've just left the earth wire dangling around in there, shoved it in the moulder, and it's moulded it. And yeah, that's the least of the worries. Okay, in the UK we've got a ring circuit, something called a ring circuit, or a ring main, or whatever you want to call it. And those are fused to 30 or 32 amps. And if you can imagine one of these with no fuse in it, and you plug it in socket, and your appliance develops a fault, well, this flex here would have to take, you know, a good 30, 40, maybe 50 amps, and then somehow you have to wait for the fuse in the consumer unit to pop. In the meanwhile, that's a fire hazard. Okay, and that is why these plugs are fused. So yes, if you've got any moulded on plugs around your house, look for the fuse holder in there. Make sure it's got a proper legitimate fuse in there. If you've got a moulded plug and it doesn't appear to be any way of changing the fuse, cut it off. Okay, take it out in the back garden, put it pins face down, stamp on it to bend the pins so you cannot put that into an electric socket and then throw it away. Take a wire it yourself plug and put that on the flex instead, and you've just made that nice and safe. Okay, but then having said that, what you then have to question, I'm going slightly off topic here, I know, But what you then have to question is if the plug was counterfeit, there's a possibility that the wire inside there is actually made out of aluminium, and that won't take 13 amps before it goes up in flames. Okay, so really speaking, if you've got a cord set with a molded on plug that hasn't got a fuse holder in there, then you really have to question the whole cord set. Okay, in which case you then have to get an electrician in and get him to change the flex and the plug. Okay, because in a lot of cases, just cutting the plug off and putting on the wire itself on, you've only half solved the problem. Okay, so there's a little tip from me on moulded on plugs, and if you've got one which hasn't got the fuse holder in it, it's probably a counterfeit one that's been imported into the UK from some far-flung country. Okay, now on an end note with these, they're not designed to be used in arduous conditions, even though you can knock and bump them about a bit and they don't, they don't smash and whatnot. Yeah, not really designed to be used in arduous conditions, even though they do find their way in those kind of environments. Once again, no ingress protection. Okay, it's the same as you wire it yourself once. Okay, zero ingress protection. But yes, obviously speaking, if you do accidentally pour a bucket of water over this, it is easy to recover and get it back into use, because you just pull the fuse out, dry it all off, and all that lot. Dry the fuse off, put it back in there, and although you shouldn't, a lot of people do put them back into service after they've gotten wet. Okay, with one of these it's a bit more tricky because you get water all in the insides and whatnot. Okay, in which case you then should take the plug off, throw it away and put another one on. And there we go. Right, I'm out of here then. Okay, just rumbled on long enough in reference to variants of British Standard 1363, British Standard 546, and of course BSEN 60309. Okay, and the back camera battery is just about to crank out, so I've just got a warning on the camera, which basically means then I've got to quit and shoot off. If you can spare me one, a thumb up would be much appreciated, and I've got to go now because the camera battery is about to crank out. Cheers for watching this one then.